thank you all for being here. Obviously, it's an exciting day. Obviously, get to talk about a few more Bulldogs joining the family. And unless I'm mistaken, I think this is also probably the first formal setting we get to talk about the final coaching staff. Right, we finalized all those hires, the on-field coaches. I don't know if you guys have seen this stat, but combined between on-field staff, off-the-field support staff, there's over 100 years of SEC experience here on this staff. I think we've done a tremendous job of emphasizing, number one, right, ties to the state of Mississippi and the recruiting footprint, that 250 to 300-mile radius around campus. I think we have a staff in place where we are going to recruit that footprint harder than anyone. It showed up in our signing class in December. The top 25 rated recruits in the state of Mississippi. We signed 12 of them, which was more than any other school. And obviously, with the additions we made to the staff, I expect us to only further increase our efforts, keeping the best players in the state of Mississippi playing at Mississippi State. And so I'm incredibly excited about the staff we've assembled here. Again, that many years of proven SEC experience, both developing players and recruiting the state of Mississippi and the footprint, is going to be incredibly valuable to me as the head coach. Okay, I would like to take a brief second to wish we got four Bulldogs playing in the Super Bowl. And I want to take a second to wish them all the best of luck. We're not talking about mere participants in this game. We're talking about 4 game records. I mean, these guys are going to directly influence the outcome of that game, the biggest game of the year on the biggest stage of football. And we're talking about 4 guys who how they play is going to go a long way in determining that game. So we're incredibly proud of the Bulldogs who are still waving the flag and flying the banner at the next level, right? As of my latest calculation, there's 28 Bulldogs playing in the NFL. 19 of those 28 either played high school football in Mississippi or played in the junior college system. And I think it's fitting to touch on that here on National Signing Day, because it is our intention that the best players in the state of Mississippi, both the high school and junior college system, right, they don't need to look anywhere else than right here for the best place to develop them both on and off the field. And that is our number one goal, recruiting the best players in this state and in the surrounding states in that footprint I mentioned, and keeping them right here at Mississippi State, because within that footprint, there's as good a football players as anywhere in the country to win a whole bunch of games with and compete and win in the SEC West. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Stop, follow. Coach, I guess along those lines, you mentioned back here in December about hitting a lot of high schools in Mississippi and make sure you find every player that can help you. Obviously, Jonathan Davis was a guy that came on the scene late, guy that had a rapid recruiting process over the past week or so. Just kind of take us through that process with him and what you think about him on the defensive line.
Yeah, obviously incredibly excited to add him to the family today. As you mentioned, right, his stock has skyrocketed in the last couple of weeks on the recruiting trail. Obviously again, I think I said this, maybe there was, people would say, man, you guys beat some big-time programs out for Jonathan Davis. Well, the way I look at it, we're a big-time program too, specifically when you're talking about that position, right? This is D-line U. Obviously, it's really nice to recruit a young defensive lineman and talk about how you're going to develop him when you got David Turner leading that room. Recruited, developed Chris Jones, Fletcher Cox, a whole host of other names in there, but obviously 2 guys right there who are probably 2 most dominant defensive tackles in the NFL, and we're going to get to see them in the Super Bowl. And I take great pride in this, actually. Tony Hughes, right, who we all know for his recruiting prowess in the state, and I don't think there's anyone who champions Mississippi high school football players more than him. He actually took me to Lawrence County High School, okay? I think it's Monday, December 14th, something like right? I actually have a picture. It helped us in recruiting Jonathan. But, right, obviously, we all know the tragedy that happened right before National Signing Day. But, right, Tony Hughes took me by there. He said, hey, Coach, you know that you always talk about there's always going to be a guy kind of flying under the radar in the state of Mississippi, but he's an SEC football player and may end up being a future Sunday player. Well, we need to go check this kid out. And we were down there, right? We went and saw him in person, and then obviously the tragic event with Coach Leach happened. It obviously turned things upside down, but I can tell you we evaluated him beforehand, we recruited him beforehand, and I think that went a long way in signing him today, is because when a lot of other schools kind of come late to the party and want to hop in and try to get a steal from the state of Mississippi, we were there first, recruiting him from the very beginning, and very proud we've added him to the family, and obviously incredibly appreciative of him and his family for sticking with us.
Coach, you just mentioned Tony Hughes there. I guess in all the staff moves that you did make, I guess how important was it to keep him on staff with the recruiting ties that he has in the state?
I can tell you in terms of my discussions with full-time coaches, he was the first one I spoke to about the need to retain him here and how much assistance he could give me. And so I think I talked about, obviously I had a conversation with Brad Peterson to come back in the pseudo chief of staff role. The guy was a former high school head coach in the state and won a lot of games, and had worked here over 3 different staffs. To have him back has been incredibly beneficial. And in terms of my conversation with the full-time coaches who were on the staff at the time, Tony Hughes was the first person I spoke to. I wanted to have him here.
What did you think of Kevin Barbet, and what made you want to bring him on staff, and what do you think he'll do for this team?
Yeah, obviously we've added a lot of coaches, really good coaches for the offense coordinator position. And I think the one thing that I've told this before, but it stood out with me because I identified with it, is probably the first question we asked any potential candidate was, all right, tell me what is your offensive identity? Who do you want to be schematically, personnel? And simply put, he said, well, show me who our best 11 players are, then I can tell you better. Because ultimately the job of a coach is to identify who your best players are, who your most explosive players are, and then put them in a position to maximize their skill set and maximize their ability to be successful. And so to talk to a candidate who, right, has a small enough ego or willing to put that aside to go, it has nothing to do with me, really. It's really, our job is to identify the best players and then build the scheme, build our identity around them. That's incredibly refreshing, because I happen to believe that's our philosophy on defense too. Right? Everyone talks 3-3-5 and what we do. We try to figure out who our best 11 players are, and then we try to start building the defense around what those guys do best. All right, we got some really good football players here on the defensive side. I had a Buki Watson. Well, I think I looked at the stats yesterday. Right, we finished with the top 2 tacklers in the SEC, and I think Buki probably up there in terms of inside linebackers for sacks. Well, it's because he's a really good football player, and when you blitz him, he usually makes good things happen living in the backfield. So we emphasize that skill set with him. Well, we expect to do the same thing on the offensive side of the ball. Figure out who our most explosive players are, get the ball in their hands, right? Maximize space so they can do what they do. And obviously we got the ultimate distributor in Will Rogers to do that. And so we're excited to see what Coach Barbet builds here this spring.
Zach, I remember after the ReliaQuest Bowl when you revealed to us that Matt Frock was calling plays in the game, and now obviously he ended up getting the job as your DC. Were you ever considering anyone else for the position? And I mean, how easy of a hire was it to make for him? What do you hope he brings to this program in that role with you?
Yeah, I think for those of you guys who probably don't know Matt as well as I do, or the other coaches in the building, I think first and foremost, the last 3 years, he was kind of my right-hand guy on defense in terms of after I got to know him, develop a trust, realized philosophically the things that we think are so important to the defensive side of the ball and the things we like to do schematically. It was just kind of a natural fit. And it's been that way with a lot of the other guys too. I mean, Darcel McBath on the back end, right? Handing off those play calling duties on game day for me. Our initial plan was, hey, I'm going to try to keep calling it just because that's what we've been doing all year. And as the new added responsibilities of being the head coach piled on, I just decided, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do as good a job at this as you. And so, well, with a couple weeks leading up to the game, or maybe about a week to game time, I just told him, hey, I think you need to operate as you're going to call it, and we're going to move it with that as a plan. And obviously, for those of you guys who don't know Matt, anything he's doing, right, anything worth doing is worth overdoing, right? So he prepared to the max, just as he's always done. And obviously, he called a phenomenal game. I told him afterwards, I actually think he probably called a more disciplined game than I would have, because usually after a couple first downs, there's going to come a reckless blitz in there or something, and he held off from that from time to time. And so I think he called a phenomenal game. Obviously, I did not want to be taking credit for that afterwards. I mean, the players go out there, they execute and made the plays, and he was the one calling the defense. And in terms of when I was named head coach, who I knew I was going to make my defense coordinator, no, there was no other person in mind until he told me no. Unfortunately, he didn't.
Coach, what do you like about Will James? Why did he make a good Bulldog, and kind of take us maybe through that recruiting process a little?
Yeah, obviously, he's an instinctual player. He does some things naturally that you don't have to coach, which is always nice. He's got good speed. You see it flash on his film, right? He got ball skills to go make plays on the ball in the air. But simply put, I think probably the thing to speak that worked out in his advantage the best is what I think I've been trying to hammer home in terms of who our staff is, and I think you'll probably see some names leak out in the next couple of days of new hires coming to staff and off-the-field support roles. But I want to be the most connected staff to our recruiting footprint of any school who recruits that footprint. Okay, and so I keep highlighting and mentioning the years of experience in the SEC, recruiting Mississippi, obviously the next two states, Louisiana, Alabama, right, Tennessee, those surrounding states. We need to work harder in those states and develop deeper relationships with the coaches than any other staff. And in regards to Will, right, any coach we reached out to, high school coaches in the area down there in Mobile, Mississippi coaches who saw him in Miss Sal All-Star game practices, right, former college coaches who, you know, in Alabama who still stay up with the local football scene and watch games. We could not find a guy that had a negative thing to say about him. Everyone we talked to said, man, this guy's an SEC football player. You know, he had an injury during his senior year that caused him to miss some significant time there in the middle part of stretch of the season. We could not find a coach who would tell us, yeah, you might want to look at this though first. Consider this. Every guy we spoke to, right, said, Coach, this guy's a steal, man. You got to get on this guy. And if we're going to develop those relationships with all the coaches, spend more time evaluating the kids in the footprint and leaning on the local high school coaches, junior college coaches, former coaches who have relationships and know that area so well, then we're also going to trust their input when it comes down to getting in on a kid kind of late in the process and going with them, because those guys have seen a whole lot of football. They've seen a whole lot of SEC football players come through their communities, their school, that area, and then they know what they look like. And obviously he's one of them.
Coach, you have two guys coaching the positions on the offensive line with Will Friend and Mike Schmidt. Can you talk about those two coaches and that dynamic of having the two guys with those guys and also with the tight ends?
Yeah, so I'm a simple guy in terms of, you know, in defense, we try to keep it as simple as possible. And I've always kind of wondered, okay, if you got 5 offensive linemen out there and a tight end on a particular play, and one guy's coaching 5 of them and one guy's responsible for 1, that doesn't seem like the most efficient use of manpower and knowledge, right? And so you see this actually as a growing trend when other teams in the league do it, right? They have multiple offensive line coaches, okay? And I just happen to think that things worked out, the stars aligned to get those 2 coaches in particular. I don't think we could be better situated in terms of knowledge of how to develop physicality up front, run the football, divide a defense. You know, obviously I have a pretty long history with Coach Schmidt, having worked with him, gone up against him a whole lot in practices. I think as far as I know, he is the only offensive line coach who can say that in a season has had a 2,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard rusher in the same backfield. That happened one of them years at SDSU when we were together. Obviously, Coach Friend has been in this league a long time. I have, I guess, up until this point, I would say, unfortunately, I've been on the receiving end of some whoopings by his O-line units several times. He was the play caller, actually, in the game here. We played against Auburn. He made my life miserable trying to call some defenses against him. But those two guys' ability to first identify, right, elite offensive line talents in the recruiting process, and then to actually develop them, and it jumps off their resume and the number of guys they've sent to the NFL, right? The opportunity to get two guys like that, it was not going to be passed up by me. And then, it's difficult on an offensive line coach to cover the myriad of things you have to do with an offensive line unit. Just one guy, usually on his own. Most guys. That's why you see so many. You got an offensive line coach. There's an assistant offensive line coach in a quality control position or graduate assistants, right? For us, the ability to have two proven Power 5 offensive line coaches who have run the ball as well as their units have over the last decade and more, we're going to jump at that opportunity.
And a quick follow-up on that, on the tight ends, Rylan Godey, you signed him out of Georgia. He's the only true tight end that you have. What do you think of him, and what's the outlook of that position in 2023?
Yeah, to get him signed today and add him to the fold is huge. Obviously, we want to have the ability to play with the tight end on the field at times. Again, it goes back to what I was talking about, Coach Barbay. At the end of the day, we're going to find out who our best 11 football players are and try to maximize their skill set. But there's some things you can do running the football and pass protection and pass game-wise, having the ability to put a tight end or two out there on the field that creates some issues for defenses and makes them decide what personnel groupings they're going to play in, right? And so to have the ability to put a tight end on the field was big for us. Obviously, Coach Schmidt leading that group, right? A guy who has a great knowledge of the pass game and certainly working with Coach Barbay. That's what they're building right now. But then also to develop physical point of attack person in the run game. And I think as we get closer to spring practice and you guys see some scrimmages, you might see a few more true tight end guys out there.
Coach, it would have been an easy transition to kind of just stick with what you had on offense and just kind of continue to move forward there, but you didn't do that. Kind of what was your thought process behind kind of retooling the offense?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think it's a little bit foolish to say that what we're going to and what we were is a drastic change. Or right, let's talk about Mike Leach's influence on the game of football. Okay, you cannot watch a passing attack on Saturdays or Sundays that is not heavily influenced, the concepts being run, that is not heavily influenced by the air raid. So, for instance, right, in the air raid world, it's called 95. You might hear it called White Cross and other trees. Some pro styles, it's called Oppo. There's a few other names for it. But, right, what Coach Leach built in the pass game, those are universal concepts that have now taken over the passing attacks of all of both college and NFL football. Okay? So certainly what we do conceptually in the pass game is going to heavily mirror and reflect what we have done for the last 3 years. Okay? Obviously, you have a 3-year returning starting quarterback, right? A proven winner who has led the league in passing last couple of years. Well, we would be pretty stupid, for lack of a better word, to go, okay, you know what? We're going to completely change our pass concepts and the way he reads progressions and delivers the football. Of course, that's going to be a very big part of what we do, right? I think we have some really explosive football players on the offensive side of the ball who we can identify ways to get them the ball and let them do what they do in a myriad of other ways. Obviously, Woody Marks is a heck of a tailback, right? And this last year, when we had a run game that was getting downhill on people and making them pay for playing light boxes, we all saw what he was capable of doing. Simeon Price jumped out in that bowl game too, right? So we have talented, capable running backs here who I think are really excited for the different run schemes we're going to be able to implement with our offense and add to the package, okay? As you do that, you immediately then create play action opportunities. Looking into the stats and the analytics, and right, you guys know those, but Will Rogers was one of the most accurate passers pushing the ball down the field on throws of 20 yards or more. right? Meaning when he did throw the ball down the field 20 yards or more, he was one of the more, it ended up in completions, right? He's one of the more accurate passers. Well, if you have the ability to put a tight end or multiple personnel groupings on the field, right, force defenses to play in heavier personnel as they're tighter to the box because you can run the football, and then you open up, right, either one-on-one matchups outside where we have some proven receiver production coming back, or you have the ability to play action pass and throw the ball over their head, you create a lot of issues for a defense, right? So I think that is what we're working towards with Coach Barbay. Again, I'm going to keep repeating. At the end of the day, we're going to figure out who our best players are. If it's best for us to be in 10 personnel and throw it around every play, right, to win a football game, well, then that's what we're going to do. We're here to win games, right? But I'm confident you're going to see some new schemes in the run game and perimeter screens and other things we can do to get the ball to our most explosive players, get them the ball in space and let them do what they do. I sure know Tulu Griffin's proven to be a really good one on kick returns, right? So if we can get him the ball in his hands out there in space and let him do what he does, he's proven to be really good at that.
Coach, you've been really aggressive in the transfer portal going after defensive backs. You added 2 more today in Christopher Keys and Kobe Albert. I guess what stands out to you about that group, and how much do you think they can impact the secondary right away?
Yeah, it's just the way it worked out. We lost quite a bit of veteran production in the secondary, particularly in the safety room too. Obviously Emmanuel Forbes, we all know what he did, but between Colin Duncan, Jalen Green, Jackie Matthews last year, those guys played the bulk of the snaps. We got Sean Preston back. But anytime you lose that much experience, there's a lot to be said for just lining up in college football games and knowing the physicality and the speed that you're going to have to face every week. And in this league, that is at a premium. So to go out and get some guys who have been in those battles, the battle tested, they know what it takes to play in a college football game, particularly in the secondary where, you make a mistake up front, right, and a run splits you, and the safety gets it on the ground for a gain of 12 to 15, well, you can line up and play the next play. You bust in the back end, the guy gets over the top of you, it's a touchdown, right? And so to get some experience, some guys who know the rigors of college football, they're a little bit older, they're not getting thrown in the fire as often, that should help us this year.
What did you think of Zach Selman? How have your conversations with him gone like? And what's that dynamic kind of be like, you think?
Oh, that's been great. Yeah. Obviously, we welcome him to the Mississippi State family. Obviously, we've both been incredibly busy. We've been on the road recruiting up until Monday, and he's obviously been doing the tours and getting around, having to get to all the different responsibilities that are now on his plate. And so swapped many texts, had conversations. We're looking forward to a long sit down here in the upcoming near future, but without trying to offend my new boss, the last couple of weeks was, I told him, hey, you don't quite get to the quarterback as well as this recruit we're going to see, so we're going to go ahead and go visit him first. But no, it's been good. He's been incredibly supportive of our efforts, and looking forward to developing a good relationship with him.
I know you had touched on Tulu there a little bit, but how important was it to get him and Xavion back, and what role do you think they can both play, obviously on special teams, but also in Kevin Barbay's offense?
Well, I know I can't go back there and return a kick, and if I did, it'd be ugly. And although I know Coach Bumpus still thinks he could get open versus any DB, I don't believe that either. So, yeah, this is a player's game. I've said that ever since I've been having to do these things, right? It's a player's game. Players win games. And so anytime you can convince guys that this is the best place for their development, both on and off the field, which we firmly believe is the case with those two guys, and obviously they do too. That's why they came back. We're incredibly proud to have them lining up for us this year.
Fried. Everything that's happened since Thanksgiving night,
from recruiting, Coach Leach passing away, bowl game, other round of recruiting, transfer flow. Have you just had a moment to take a breath and kind of take everything in at this point?
Yeah, you get those moments. As you mentioned, I kind of wanted to reflect on that Thanksgiving night again real quick because that was pretty enjoyable. But no, I mean, obviously it's been a whirlwind process. You know, the way it came about, obviously, what no one would ever want. But again, I'm just going to keep highlighting the staff around me. Okay, is when you can get a staff that has over 100 years of SEC experience, obviously that is a great asset to a new head coach, particularly in this league. And so I've told them that before, and I'm going to tell them again in the next staff meeting. All right, but I'm going to be leaning on those guys heavily, and they're some of the best at their job of any guys in the country. And I remember hearing David Turner talk about it. Right, Starkville, Mississippi State. It is a special place. All right, if you love ball, if you love recruiting guys who want to line up and put in a full day's work, and they love football, this is the place for you. And I think that's what's made it so enjoyable going out and identifying coaches to come join me in this and coach here. Is it don't take too long coming around here and being around our players to know that if you're a ball coach and you like football players who like to work and play the game the right way, then this is the place for you.
Anything else?
Thank y'all very much. Hail State.